There's a way of living that most people will never experience, not because it's impossible, but because it requires something almost no one is willing to do: give something up. We live surrounded by weight, accumulating layers upon layers of things, commitments, expectations, and we call this adulthood, responsibility, success. But Seneca, 2,000 years ago, already knew something we insist on ignoring. The more you carry, the less free you are. Simplicity isn't an aesthetic choice. It's not Instagram minimalism. It's not about having a beautiful house with 3 objects on the table. It's about something much deeper and much more urgent. It's about reclaiming your life before it completely slips through your hands. And maybe this is the hardest truth to accept, that we spend years building a prison and calling it progress, that we accumulate chains and call them achievements, that we lose our freedom piece by piece while thinking we were winning the game. Have you ever stopped to count how many things you own that you never consciously asked to have? I'm not just talking about physical objects, although they're an obvious part of the problem. I'm talking about everything. Commitments that exist in your schedule that you accepted just because you couldn't say no. Relationships you maintain out of pure social obligation, even though they drain all your energy. Expectations about who you should be that were planted by other people and that you carry as if they were your own. The truth is that most of us are living a life we didn't consciously choose. We go accumulating, saying yes, buying, accepting, and when we realize it, we're completely suffocated under a weight we don't even know where it came from. Seneca called this voluntary slavery, and that's exactly what it is. We ourselves build the chains that bind us. We lock the door to our own cell, and then we complain that we have no freedom. We complain that life is heavy, that we have no time, that we're always tired, but we keep accumulating more weight, saying yes to more things, complicating even further what was already too complicated. Think with me honestly. How many clothes do you have in your closet that you haven't worn in months, maybe years, but you still keep because one day, who knows, on some specific occasion that probably will never happen, maybe you'll need them? How many decorative objects, kitchen utensils, electronic devices, books you'll never read, courses you'll never take? And each one of these things demands something from you, even when it's just sitting there taking up space. It needs to be stored somewhere, needs to be cleaned, organized, protected from dust or mold, eventually fixed or replaced when it breaks. That phone you bought because it was the latest release and you wanted to stay updated. Now you live in fear of scratching it, dropping it, getting robbed on the street, having it become obsolete too fast. That expensive outfit you wear once a year on a special occasion. It's there taking up space in the closet, making you feel guilty for not using it more, reminding you of the money you spent and shouldn't have spent. And this multiplies by absolutely everything you have. Your home isn't a space of peace and refuge like it should be. It's a giant warehouse of things that control your attention, your energy, your time, your life. And you don't even notice anymore, because everyone lives like this, so it seems normal, it seems inevitable, it seems like that's just the way things are. But it's not. And Seneca proved this in his own life. He lived in Rome at the height of the empire, surrounded by luxury, wealth, power. He was one of the richest men of the time, had access to literally everything money could buy: mansions, refined food, expensive clothes, slaves, every imaginable comfort. And even so, from time to time, he practiced something he called voluntary poverty. He chose to live a few days, sometimes weeks, with the absolute minimum. He ate only bread and water, wore simple and worn clothes, slept in a hard bed, gave up all comfort. And it wasn't as punishment, it wasn't to feel superior, it wasn't to impress anyone. It was as mental and spiritual training. Seneca understood something we've completely lost, that the only way to know if you're truly free from your possessions is to test that freedom regularly. He wanted to prove to himself, repeatedly, that he was capable of being happy with less, that his inner peace didn't depend on external things, that he wasn't a slave to his possessions and luxuries. And you know what he discovered every time he did this exercise of voluntary poverty? That it wasn't just possible to live with less, but that there was a lightness, a clarity, a deep peace that only came when you let go of the excess. That true happiness wasn't in things, but in the radical freedom of not needing them. That he could lose everything, absolutely everything, and still remain whole, because who he truly was wasn't in any way defined by what he possessed. And there's more. Seneca recommended this exercise of voluntary poverty not just for himself, but for everyone seeking a free life. He said we should, at least once a month, live a few days voluntarily practicing scarcity, not to suffer, but to remind ourselves that we can, to train ourselves for adversity while things are good, not wait to react when we've already lost everything. Because when you practice living with the minimum by your own choice, when you test your capacity to be happy without the comforts you got used to, something powerful happens. You free yourself from fear, the fear of losing, the fear of lack, the fear of not having enough. And when you free yourself from that fear, you become invulnerable. Fortune can take everything from you, but it can't take your inner peace, because you've already proven to yourself that you don't need anything external to be well. And more than that, you discover there's a dignity, a strength, a clarity that comes from living with the essential. Seneca did this regularly, even being extremely rich. He spent days eating simple bread and water, wearing his worst clothes, sleeping in basic conditions. And then he returned to his normal life, but transformed. Because he had proven once again that his happiness wasn't in the mansions, the banquets, the fine clothes. It was in himself, in his capacity to be well regardless of circumstances. And this is a freedom that money can't buy, that no external achievement can give you. Only you can conquer this through the deliberate practice of not depending on anything. Now think about your own life. How many times have you bought something honestly believing it was going to make you happy? How many times have you looked at an object, an outfit, a new gadget, and thought that finally, this time, it would be different, that that acquisition would fill the void, would bring the satisfaction that's missing? And what happened? You bought it, felt that brief and intense moment of pleasure, dopamine rushing through your brain, and then what? A week, a month, and you were already eyeing the next thing. The anxiety came back, the feeling of insufficiency came back, the void came back, because the inconvenient truth, the truth no one wants to hear, and that advertising actively works for you to forget, is that the more you have, the more you want, the more you need to protect, the more you have to lose, the more vulnerable you become. Seneca had a phrase that always gets me. Wealth is the slavery of many under one owner's name. The more you possess, the more things possess you. Each object is a new worry. Each acquisition is a new responsibility. Each level of comfort is a new dependency you've created for yourself. And it's not just about material objects. That would be easier to solve. It's about commitments, about social obligations, about expectations. Your schedule is full, completely packed, with things you don't want to do but accept, because you think you should, because you're afraid of displeasing someone, because everyone does it, and you don't want to be seen as strange or antisocial. Birthdays of people you barely know, but you go because it would be rude not to. Meetings that lead nowhere, but you attend because it's expected. Social events that completely drain your energy just to keep up appearances, just to not look bad. You say yes because saying no seems selfish, seems rude, seems wrong. But wait a second and ask yourself, what's really more wrong here? Saying no and protecting your time, your energy, your mental sanity? Or saying yes and spending your entire life doing things that don't matter to you in the slightest? Living to please people who probably won't even remember your presence a week from now. Seneca wrote an entire essay called On the Shortness of Life, and in it he talks exactly about this, how we waste our life. He said something that marks me every time I read it. Life is long enough, even more than enough, if we know how to use it well. But most people reach the end of life and realize, too late, that they didn't live, they just existed. They just spent their days fulfilling routines, obligations, doing what was expected. And you know why this happens? Because they spent all their time busy with what doesn't matter. Busy maintaining things, fixing things. buying new things to replace the old ones, busy fulfilling empty social obligations, busy trying to impress people who don't really care, busy performing a version of themselves they don't even know anymore if it's real or not. And when finally there's free time, a moment of silence, they don't know what to do with it. They get uncomfortable, anxious, because they've completely lost the ability to simply be, to exist without producing something, without consuming something, without performing for someone. There's something Seneca talked about a lot, constantly, and that we need to understand with maximum urgency, because this is at the root of so much modern suffering, the fear of loss. We accumulate things not because we really need them, not because they make our life better, but because we have a paralyzing fear of one day needing them and not having them. We keep objects we literally never use, that sit there taking up space for months or years, because what if one day, in some specific situation that probably will never happen, I need it? Better keep it, better accumulate, better not let go, just in case. We maintain relationships that don't nourish us in the slightest, that even actively harm us, that make us feel small, that drain our energy, because we have a visceral fear. What if I'm alone? What if no one else shows up? What if I need someone and I don't have anyone? Check the first pinned comment about this. But going back, we accept jobs that slowly destroy us, that take our mental and physical health, that make us feel dead inside, because we have a deep terror. What if I don't have money? What if I can't pay the bills? What if everything falls apart? And this constant fear, this anxiety that never stops, this terror of loss and lack, literally transforms us into slaves. Because while you live dominated by the fear of losing, you're never truly free, not for a second. You're completely trapped by what you have, totally hostage to circumstances, dependent on things and people that are completely, absolutely outside your control. You built your entire life, your identity, your sense of security and stability on completely fragile foundations, on quicksand that can crumble at any moment without warning you. And you know this deep down. You know everything is precarious. You know everything can go away, so you live in constant anxiety, vigilant, trying to control what can't be controlled, trying to hold on to what can't be held, and exhausting yourself completely in the process. The simplicity that Seneca proposes and that I'm trying to show you here isn't about having little. It's not about depriving yourself or living in scarcity. It's about needing little. It's about building a life where your happiness, your peace, your sense of being well, your own identity don't depend on external factors. It's about looking at absolutely everything you possess, every commitment in your schedule, every relationship in your life, and asking a very simple but very difficult question. Does this free me or imprison me? Does this object bring me genuine joy or just take up space and generate worry? Does this commitment feed me in some way or just drain my energy? Does this person help me grow, accept me as I am, or keep me small, judge me, make me feel insufficient? And having the courage, the real courage, to eliminate what no longer serves, what never served. Because we get attached, and we get attached hard, not necessarily to what's good for us, but to what's familiar, to what we know. We're afraid to let go because we don't know who will be on the other side of that choice, how life will be without it. But here's a crucial aspect of simplicity that Seneca taught and that very few people truly understand: the direct relationship between simplicity and courage. Because simplifying isn't a passive act of just eliminating things. It's an extremely active and courageous act of defining who you are through your conscious choices. Every time you decide not to buy something everyone around you is buying, you're making a silent but powerful statement about your values. Every time you choose not to go to a social event because you genuinely prefer to spend time alone or with very specific people, you're defining your priorities in a way most people will never have the courage to do. Every time you give up a status symbol that society intensely values, you're declaring to the world that your identity isn't built through external validation or others' approval. And this requires immense courage, tremendous inner strength, because you're swimming against the social current all the time. You're deliberately choosing to be different in a culture that brutally punishes difference. You're prioritizing substance and essence in a world completely obsessed with appearances and superficiality. But it's exactly this courage to be different, to choose consciously, to live according to your values, even when no one is watching or applauding, that gradually transforms you into someone truly free. I'm going to tell you something that might scare you, that might make you uncomfortable. You probably don't need 90% of what you have. You don't need half the clothes in your closet that sit there for months untouched. You don't need all those kitchen utensils you bought thinking you'd use and never used. You don't need this absurd amount of options, backups, plan Bs and Cs and Ds, imaginary securities that you accumulate thinking they protect you, but that actually just weigh you down. Seneca had a very beautiful way of talking about this. He said, we should treat our possessions as borrowed things, as temporary loans that need to be returned at any moment. Not because we're pessimistic, or because we expect to lose everything, but because this mentality frees us from unhealthy attachment, paralyzing fear, suffocating dependence. When you live as if everything were temporary, as if nothing really belongs to you, you finally manage to enjoy what you have without being its slave. You use, appreciate, but don't get attached. And when it goes away, and everything goes away sooner or later, you remain whole. And you know what's interesting? What really fascinates me about all this? When you start simplifying your material life, when you actually start eliminating the excess, something magical happens with your mind. You gain clarity. It's as if all that noise, all that constant overload of stimuli, options, decisions, worries, starts to gradually decrease. And suddenly, maybe for the first time in a long time, you can hear your own voice again. You can know what you really want, not what you were told you should want. You can understand what really matters to you, not what society says should matter. You can discover who you really are when you remove all the masks, all the roles, all the expectations. Because excess creates a thick layer of confusion, of noise, that prevents us from truly knowing ourselves. We're so busy managing things, maintaining appearances, meeting expectations, that we completely forget to look inward and ask, but me, who am I in all this? What do I really want? What do I really need to be well? And here comes something we need to talk about very honestly. Consumerism doesn't just distract or put you in debt, it literally hijacks your identity. Think about how many times you've defined yourself or defined other people through what they possess. I'm the type of person who drives such a car, who wears such a clothing brand, who lives in such a neighborhood, who frequents such places. We build identity through consumption symbols, through brands, through possessions. And this is absolutely tragic, because it means who you are is completely outsourced, is in the hands of companies, trends, fashions that change all the time. Seneca challenges us with a brutal question. Who would you be without your possessions? If they took everything from you tomorrow, the car, the house, the brand name clothes, the gadgets, all the symbols, who would be left? Is there someone underneath, or have you become just a collection of things you possess? Simplicity is, at its core, a radical act of reclaiming your true identity. It's when you stop defining yourself by what you have and start defining yourself by what you are, by your values, by your character, by your choices, by your genuine relationships. It's when you look in the mirror and recognize someone real, not a walking showcase of products and brands. And there's more. When you live defined by your possessions, you become hostage to others' opinions, because you need people to see and validate what you have to feel good about yourself. You buy that car, not because you need transportation, but because you need people to see you in that car. You wear that outfit, not because you genuinely like it, but because you need the approval of those who recognize the brand. You post that photo, not to record a moment, but to collect likes and comments that temporarily fill your identity void. It's a vicious and exhausting cycle. You consume to build an image. You need constant external validation to maintain that image. And when the validation doesn't come or isn't enough, you consume more. Seneca frees us from this by reminding us that the only opinion that really matters is your own. The only validation that truly sustains is the one that comes from living according to your values. And when you simplify, when you stop playing this game of appearances, you recover something precious, the ability to be self-sufficient, to approve of yourself, to be whole without needing any audience. Think about social media for a minute. Really think honestly. How many hours a day do you spend scrolling infinitely, watching other people's lives parade in front of you, seeing what they have, what they do, where they travel, what they've achieved, how they always seem happy, always fulfilled, always in the right place doing the right thing? And how do you feel when you finally close the app and return to your reality? Better, inspired, energized, or do you feel worse, smaller, insufficient, behind, like you're missing something important that everyone got except you, like everyone is moving forward and you're standing still or even regressing? Seneca said something 2,000 years ago that's frighteningly applicable today, as if he was predicting social media. We suffer much more from imagination than from reality. And comparison is exactly that, pure imagination, pure constructed illusion. You're comparing your entire life with all the real problems, all the insecurities, all the difficult moments that only you see, with a completely edited, filtered, curated version of others' lives. You're competing alone in a race you never chose to run, chasing prizes you're not even sure you really want, just because everyone around you seems to be doing exactly the same thing, and you're afraid of falling behind, of being left, of being forgotten. But behind what exactly? Toward where? For what purpose? These questions we never ask. We just run, just compete, just compare, and suffer in the process. Simplicity takes you out of that insane race. When you consciously stop accumulating, deliberately stop competing, intentionally stop trying to impress people who deep down don't matter, you can finally focus on what's genuinely yours, on what's concretely real, on what's deeply true. You exit completely automatic mode, this mental autopilot, where you just keep doing things because you always did it this way, because it's socially expected, and you finally enter totally intentional and conscious mode. Each thing you now possess, you consciously chose with criteria. You know exactly why it's there, what function it serves, what value it brings. Each commitment that exists in your schedule, you said yes because it really matters in some significant way, because it genuinely feeds you, because it makes deep sense to you. Each relationship you maintain in your life, you actively cultivate because it truly does you good, because it's reciprocal and balanced, because it helps you be a better version of yourself. And absolutely everything that doesn't rigorously pass through this conscious and careful filter. You develop the genuine courage to let it go, to release without guilt, to say no without excessively justifying yourself. But we resist hard, because simplifying deeply scares us. There's fear of regret, fear of needing that thing one day and not having it anymore, fear of others' judgment. What will people think if I stop showing up at all social events? What will they say if I sell my car and start using public transportation? What will they think if I move to a smaller, simpler, cheaper place, even though I'm earning well? If I stop buying brand name clothes? If I say, I don't want to be part of that group anymore? And the hard truth is that people will think, will talk, will judge. But they do that anyway, no matter what you do, no matter how perfectly you try to live. You can spend your entire life trying to please everyone, and there will still be people judging you, criticizing you, thinking you're not enough. The real question, the question that matters is, are you going to live for the audience or for yourself? Are you going to build a life that looks good on the outside or a life that is good on the inside? Seneca had an expression that I find absolutely powerful, that I think sums up everything. True poverty isn't having little, it's needing much. He knew very rich people, people with immense fortunes, with possessions everywhere, who were completely enslaved to their possessions, trapped in the constant need to protect what they had, obsessed with maintaining and increasing their wealth, terrorized by the possibility of losing something, of falling in status, of being judged. And at the same time, he knew people with almost nothing, people who lived with the essential and who were genuinely free. Free because they didn't depend on external factors to be happy, because they had built their inner peace on a solid foundation that no one could take away. Freedom, true freedom, isn't in how much you have, it's in how much you need. And the less you need, the freer you are, the lighter you become, the stronger you get. Now try to imagine with me, try to really visualize. What would your life be like if you eliminated everything that's unnecessary? If you stopped buying things you don't need, that you don't use, that just take up space and generate worry? If you stopped accepting invitations you don't want to go to, maintaining commitments that drain your energy, doing things just because it's expected? If you stopped maintaining relationships out of obligation, out of guilt, out of fear of being alone? If you stopped obsessively worrying about the opinion of people who don't really even matter to you? Imagine the space that would open up. The physical space in your house, the mental space in your head, the emotional space in your heart. Imagine the time that would free up, the time you'd suddenly have to do what really matters. Imagine the clarity that would bring, the peace, the internal silence. It's not about living less. It's not about depriving yourself. It's not about suffering. It's about living more deeply, more intensely, more truly. It's about trading quantity for quality, superficiality for meaning, noise for silence, distraction for presence. There's an exercise Seneca recommended that I find genuinely transformative, that I practice in my own life. Every day, eliminate one thing. It can be a physical object you haven't used in months. It can be a commitment that doesn't nourish you. It can be a worry you have no control over. It can be a habit that no longer serves you. It can even be a recurring thought that only harms you. It doesn't need to be radical. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be consistent, constant, daily. Because liberation, true liberation, doesn't happen all at once in a magical moment of enlightenment. It happens through small daily choices, repeated, of letting go of what's not essential, of saying no to what doesn't matter, of protecting what's really worth it. And over time, with practice, you'll notice you're lighter, that you breathe better, that you sleep better, that you're freer, more yourself, more whole. And the most incredible, most beautiful thing about simplicity is that it amplifies what really matters. When you remove the noise, when you eliminate the excess, the essential gains volume, gains presence, gains meaning. That dinner with friends you really love, who truly understand you, becomes more intense, more present, more memorable. That real conversation you have with someone who accepts you as you are, without masks, becomes an experience that marks you, that transforms you. That moment of silence, of contemplation, of connection with yourself, finally has space to exist, to breathe, to be. Because you're no longer living on autopilot, running from one thing to another without ever stopping, trying to handle 1,000 things at once and not handling anything properly. You're living intentionally, consciously, fully. Each moment has weight, has value, because you chose to be there. Seneca literally spent his entire life studying, reflecting, writing about how to live well. He had access to all the knowledge of the time, conversed with the greatest philosophers, lived with emperors, was Nero's tutor, experienced wealth, power, fame, everything society says should make you happy. And you know what his conclusion was after all that? That the good life, the life that's really worth it, isn't in accumulating, but in discerning. It isn't in having more, but in needing less. It isn't in controlling everything around you, but in accepting what you can't control and focusing only on what you can. And what can you control? Your choices, your values, your thoughts, your response to the world. The rest is circumstance, is luck, is fortune. And fortune, as the name itself indicates, can change completely at any moment without warning you. That's why simplicity is so powerful, so liberating. Because when you build your life on solid foundations, on what's really essential, on your internal values, and not on external circumstances, you become invulnerable to life's oscillations. You can lose your job, can lose money, can lose possessions, can go through crises, and still continue being who you are, because your identity isn't in things, it's in you. You can be rejected, criticized, misunderstood, attacked, and still maintain your inner peace, because your peace doesn't depend on others' approval, doesn't depend on being accepted, doesn't depend on being popular. It depends solely and exclusively on your internal integrity, your values, who you choose to be regardless of circumstances. But there's an absolutely silent poison that acts slowly but with devastating effectiveness that we need to face head on if we want to really be free someday. Comparison. We live in an absolutely unique and unprecedented time in all of human history, where literally everyone is constantly, obsessively exposing their best versions, their brightest achievements, their most incredible travels, their most impressive purchases, their most spectacular successes, their happiest moments. Nobody posts the moment they're crying alone in the bathroom. Nobody shares the argument with their partner. Nobody shows the bill they can't pay. Nobody exposes the deep insecurity they feel when they're alone. Everyone only shows the highlight reel, only the best moments, only the edited and filtered version of life. And it's so easy, so tempting, so natural to fall into the cruel trap of thinking you're falling behind, that you're not good enough, that you need to do more, have more, be more, achieve more, appear more. Seneca reminds us, and this wisdom crosses millennia, that we suffer immensely more from imagination, from the stories we tell ourselves, than from concrete reality. Comparison is pure fabricated imagination, pure constructed illusion. You're comparing your complete and raw reality with all the real problems, all the deep insecurities, all the difficult moments that only you know and that no one else sees, with a completely edited, filtered, curated, artificial version of others' lives. You're not competing with real people. You're competing with fantasies, with illusions, with projections. You're not in any real race. You're running alone in circles, chasing imaginary prizes. You're not even absolutely sure you really want, just because everyone around you seems to be doing exactly the same thing, and you have a paralyzing fear of falling behind, of being left, of being forgotten, of not being enough. Simplicity is, when you really stop to think about it, an act of genuine and profound rebellion against an entire system. Because we live immersed in a gigantic economic system, in a complex and invisible social structure that literally profits directly, billions and billions, from your constant and insatiable discontent, that subtly convinces you every day, through 1,000 different channels, that you need more and more to finally be happy, that transforms absolutely everything that exists into a consumable product, including your identity, including your deepest dreams, including your most fundamental values, including your most intimate insecurities. The entire system was built and refined over decades to keep you in a perpetual vicious cycle. You feel insufficient, so you buy something to fill the void. You feel momentary pleasure. Then the void comes back even bigger, so you need to buy more and more and more, without ever actually reaching a point of real and lasting satisfaction. When you consciously, deliberately choose to live simply, you're literally saying no to this entire gigantic system. You're categorically refusing to play a perverse game where the rules were made specifically and carefully for you to always lose, always feel insufficient, always need one more thing. You're actively recovering your autonomy that was stolen, your freedom that was hijacked, your capacity for choice that was manipulated, your real life that was being lived by proxy through others' expectations. And look, I know very well, I understand perfectly that making these choices isn't easy at all. I know there's enormous social pressure coming from all sides. There's family expectation, from friends, from colleagues, from everyone. There's a very real and very understandable fear of others' judgment, of social rejection, of not fitting in anywhere anymore. But what Seneca teaches us through all his work, what he discovered through his own intensely lived experience, is something that needs to be said very clearly. The fear of simplifying is, when you look deep down, actually the existential fear of being genuinely free. Because true freedom, real freedom, and not the romantic freedom from movies, brings along with it a heavy and inevitable responsibility. When you consciously eliminate all convenient excuses, when you definitively stop blaming external circumstances, others, the system, society, when you take total control of your life without outsourcing responsibility anymore, you can no longer hide comfortably behind anything. You have to face head-on who you really are beneath all the social masks, what you really want when you're not trying to please anyone, what you're really afraid of when you remove all the distractions you use to not think about it. And this deeply and legitimately scares many people, because confronting yourself truly is one of the most difficult and painful exercises that exists. It's infinitely more comfortable, more psychologically safe, easier in day-to-day life to continue living on familiar autopilot, constantly complaining about life but not actually changing anything substantial, too busy with 1,000 things to stop and honestly reflect on what you're doing with the days you have, where you're going, if this makes any true sense. But you don't have to be like everyone else. You really can choose differently. You can choose a lighter, more conscious life, more aligned with who you really are. And this starts now, not tomorrow, not when circumstances are perfect, not when you have more time or more money. It starts with small decisions you make today. It starts when you look at that object that's been stored for months without use and finally decide to donate it. When you look at that commitment that drains all your energy and decide to cancel, decide to say no. When you look at that constant worry you have no control over and consciously decide to let it go, stop feeding it. When you stop living trying to please everyone, trying to fit in, trying to be who they expect you to be, and start living for yourself, being who you really are. And when you truly live, when you finally stop just existing on automatic executing routines and start living consciously making choices, something absolutely fundamental changes in you. Something you'll feel in the first few weeks. You stop feeling that constant and suffocating anxiety that literally accompanies you all day from the moment you wake up until bedtime. That anguishing sensation of always desperately running after something, but never really achieving anything. You stop looking at others' lives with that corrosive envy, with that paralyzing frustration, with that painful sensation that everyone is better than you, happier, more fulfilled, more successful. You stop feeling insufficient all the time, inadequate in any environment, behind compared to others. Like you're missing something essentially important that everyone understood except you. Because you finally understand, truly understand deep in your soul, not just intellectually but viscerally, that life isn't a brutal competition where everyone is frantically running to get somewhere specific, that's someone determined to be the right place. It's not a test you need to pass with a perfect score. It's not a performance you need to execute perfectly for an audience that constantly judges you. It's an absolutely unique, personal, non-transferable, unrepeatable experience. And you're here, on this planet, at this specific moment in history, to live it your way, at your own pace, with what makes genuine sense to you, not to impress anyone, not to please your parents, not to meet social expectations, not to compete with your friends or colleagues, for you and only for you. And you know what else happens when you radically simplify. You recover something precious you probably lost a long time ago. Your ability to marvel at the simple, at the ordinary, at what's available here and now. When your life is an infinite succession of stimuli, novelties, achievements, purchases, extraordinary experiences, you develop a tolerance, a resistance. You need increasingly larger doses to feel anything. A normal dinner isn't enough anymore. It needs to be at an expensive and Instagrammable restaurant. A walk in the park doesn't satisfy anymore. It needs to be a trip to an exotic destination. A conversation with a friend seems insufficient. It needs to be a big and busy social event. You completely lose the ability to appreciate what's small, quiet, subtle, simple. But when you simplify, when you deliberately remove the excesses and return to the essential, something magical happens. you rediscover the immense value of small things. That peaceful breakfast alone, or with someone you love, becomes a moment of deep peace. That real conversation, unhurried, without a phone in hand, becomes a genuine connection that feeds you for days. That moment of silence observing the sky or listening to the birds becomes an experience of total presence that reconnects you with something bigger. Simplicity doesn't impoverish your life. It enriches it absurdly, because it teaches you to extract deep meaning from what was always available, but that you were too busy to notice, to appreciate, to truly value. Seneca had full and constant awareness of death, of absolute finitude, of the inevitable impermanence of literally everything that exists. He knew with complete certainty that life is absurdly short and completely unpredictable, that we can lose everything we have at any moment without absolutely any prior warning, without any chance to prepare ourselves. And instead of living completely paralyzed with existential fear of this, instead of going into total denial like most people do, he used exactly this acute awareness of death to live infinitely better, to live much more intensely each day, to not waste even a single day with what doesn't matter in the slightest, to deeply value the present, the here and now, because this is literally all we actually have. The past is gone and won't come back. The future doesn't exist yet and may never exist. To not eternally postpone what's essential, waiting for a perfect moment that never, ever will come. The simplicity he defended and practiced is born directly from this deep existential urgency. We have no time at all to waste with the superfluous, with the unnecessary, with what constantly distracts us from what really truly matters. Life is now, at this exact moment while you're reading or hearing this, and each day you spend completely trapped in material things, empty commitments, others' expectations that aren't genuinely yours, is a precious day you've lost forever and that will never, under any circumstances, come back. So, the final question I leave for you to deeply reflect on is, how much longer are you going to wait? How much longer are you going to postpone this choice to live lighter, freer, truer? Are you waiting for the perfect moment that's never going to come? Are you waiting for circumstances to miraculously align? Are you waiting for someone's permission? Because no one is going to give you that permission. No one is going to make that choice for you. No one is going to simplify your life if you don't do it. And time is passing now, at this exact second, while you're reading or hearing this. Life is happening now, not in the future when everything is perfect. And either you take the reins, take control, make the difficult choices, or you're going to continue being carried by the current, accumulating more weight, saying yes to more things that don't matter, living for others, and one day you're going to wake up old and you're going to realize you lost your only life doing what you didn't want to do, being who you didn't want to be, carrying what you didn't need to carry. And there's no second chance, there's no replay, there's no way to go back and do it differently. It's now or never. It's your choice or others' choice for you. It's freedom or prison. It's simple and true life, or complicated and false life. And only you can decide. So here's my final invitation, based on everything Seneca taught us through a lifetime of reflection and practice. Experiment. You don't need to blindly believe, you don't need to accept it as absolute truth, you don't need to make a complete dramatic revolution in your life tomorrow morning, but experiment. Test. See for yourself. Choose one specific area of your life, just one to start, and radically simplify it over the next 30 days. Not superficially, not timidly, but really radically. It can be your closet, it can be your schedule, it can be your finances, it can be your relationships, it can be your digital consumption. Choose one area, any area, and truly commit to simplifying, to eliminating the excess without fear, to staying only with the absolutely essential. And see what happens to you. Observe if you don't feel significantly lighter. Observe if you don't gain much more clarity. Observe if you don't finally start to better understand who you truly are. Because the simple life is in no way the impoverished life. It's exactly the opposite. It's finally your own true life, the authentic life you always wanted to live, but never gave yourself permission to. And it's available to you now, at this exact moment. It only depends on a single choice that only you can make. The conscious and courageous choice to let go of what no longer serves, so you can finally hold with both hands what really matters.